Throughout the history of the typewriter, most typewriters had fixed typefaces. When you bought the machine, whatever style or size of typeface it had, that's what you stuck with. But not all typewriters, even in the early days, were that way. Amongst other brands was the Hammond typewriters that had shuttles, replaceable type shuttles. There were a number of other models that also had interchangeable type elements. But it wasn't until the early 1960s, when the first IBM Selectric hit the market, that revolutionized typewriters, especially in the office, with interchangeable type elements. For instance, this here is an Orator 10 type element. And then in the early 1980s, daisy wheel typewriters came in with replaceable print wheels. But throughout all of this change, other typewriter manufacturers began to take notice of these market changes. Amongst others was Smith Corona. And by the time the 1960s hit, Smith Corona, known as SCM, Smith Corona Marchant, they decided to embark upon an idea of having one or two characters which could be replaced in a type bar machine, and that was known as changeable type. And I'd like to talk today about Smith Corona's changeable type system. Stay tuned. So Smith Corona's changeable type system applies to the 6, 7, and 8 series machines. Now, in my collection, I have only 6 series machines. I have 4 of them. Let's see. I have the Galaxy 12. I have a Singer Electric made by SCM. Then I have a Electra 120 and Electra 220, I believe. So those are the 4 6 series in my collection. Let's take a look at them and see how their changeable type works. On many of the Smith Corona typewriters, 6 series, 7, and 8 series, you'll have 2 changeable type keys. Some of them you only have 1 key. I'll show you one of those later. And they're usually the upper number row, the far left and the far right key. And they come default usually with a number 1 and the exclamation mark on the left and the plus equals on the right. So along with the keycap, so this keycap is replaceable or removable. Along with that, the number 1 key here and the plus equals key here, the type slugs are removable, can be taken off and swapped out, and that's what the little kit is. It has the keycap and the corresponding type slug. Okay, so the old keycap, the number 1 keycap, I'm just going to get around it like this and pull the top off, and it comes off quite easily like that. Here's the little box. So the wider part of the keycap goes toward the rear or toward the platen. So just get around it like that and push it down like that. Okay, to remove the changeable type slug, you want to pull the type bar forward slightly, grasp the type bar firmly with one hand, and then you want to move the bottom of the type slug forward and then move the top of the type slug forward and lift up, and you'll be able to remove it quite easily. Now, the way you can tell the bottom from the top of the slug is the bottom slug has a hole, a slot in it that's free and clear, whereas the top slot has an obstruction in it that doesn't allow the type bar to go all the way in. So when you're reinstalling this type slug, make sure, of course, the characters are toward the carriage. You're using the open end of the slot. You push it onto the type bar and push it down till it clicks into place like that. And let's test type with it now. Well, those are some cool little arrow symbols. And you can see the size of them relative to the number keys here. Okay, so these are type samples of all my changeable types that I have. So on top we have the left and right arrows. Next we have the pi symbol and the degree symbol. And then we have superscripts 2 and 3, and then superscripts 4 and 3. Then we have an accent mark and a tilde. And finally the alpha and the beta. So those are the 12 symbols on 6 changeable type slugs that I have in my collection. But we should take a look at the wider selection that was available through Smith Corona. So I do have the owner's manual for the Electra 210 and 220. It came with my 220. And on page 6, they do have a little bit of a write-up about the changeable type and how to install and remove both the slug and the keycap. But then the machine came with one of these guides to the changeable type. They have these categorized. Back then, I think this was the late 60s, they categorized these by mathematical, engineering, medical, Spanish American, popular Greek, and international symbols, 4 of each. And each one of these was a kit that you could buy. Each one is a little box with a set of 4. Hey, they're only $10, and they kind of show you how to install them. There's a little order form, which is kind of cool. And then this is the picture of the little box that they come in a sets of 4. So some of the ones I've seen for sale online are the actual sets of 4. Later on in the late 60s or 70s, they made an even wider selection of changeable type, and I found online one of those that we could look at. Well, I found this picture that had a whole layout of a lot larger collection of changeable types, and it appears to be related to this sheet right here that was probably published later on from the first one I showed you, and you can see behind it all of the additional changeable types that were available at one time. And I would point out to you that one of those sets of changeable types is the Interrobang with an exclamation mark, and I think that's a pretty cool symbol. So you'll notice on this changeable type guide, they're showing the keycaps in red, and the little box is red keycaps. And the red keycaps for the changeable type were the earliest kind. After they had the red ones, then they came out with the black keys with the white rims, the ones that I have. But there was also a third style that had the same trapezoidal shape, but it was all black. And then there was a fourth style later on that was squarish shaped, and these came in both white and kind of off-white colors. Now, my other 3 SCM 6 series machines all have 2 changeable type keys, the 1 key and the plus equals key. But this is a Singer Electric made by SCM, and it only has the individual 1 key that is a change of type instead of 2 of them. And I've seen evidence online that there was also an SCM branded machine, a narrower 10-inch version that also had a single change of type instead of the dual change of type keys. So you will see variations between the various models and brands as to whether it was a single or a dual key change of type. I should also mention that there were SCM-made 6 series machines branded as Sears that instead of having the slide open ribbon cover, they had a hinged cover that flipped up toward the back, and those machines had a little compartment near the, I think it was in front of the left ribbon spool, for storing spare change of type key kits, like the individual little boxes. You could store a box in there, and I think that was only with the Sears machines, and I think the sliding lid arrangement precludes you from having that because you can't really access it because this lid doesn't give you room. So as I was researching this whole change of type thing, I saw some discussions online about whether they were built specifically to be pica size 10 character per inch or elite size 12 character per inch, or were they kind of universal, would fit either one. And the reason why I'm interested in that is I have 4 6 series machines in my collection, and one of those is an elite 12 character per inch, the Electra 220. And I have 6 of these change of type kits, and I'm curious, will they work with both Pike and Elite size text? Now, of the 6 I have, I think the Alpha Beta kit is probably the one that's closest in size to actual letters in the English language. So I thought, let's go check it out and see if there's a preferred type size for that Alpha Beta kit, or if it works with both Pica and Elite. So here are 2 type samples. The top set is from the Pica size Galaxy 12. The bottom set is the Elite or 12 character per inch Electra 220. What I've done here is I'm using the alpha and beta character set compared against the A and B character set of each machine respectively. So looking at the Galaxy 12, the alpha and the beta compared to the lowercase a and b and the uppercase a and b. And then on the Electra 220, the same alpha beta compared against the smaller lowercase a and b and uppercase a and b. It looks to me like with the Galaxy 12, the alpha beta characters look a little bit closer in size to pica. With the elite size, there is a little bit of difference, like the capital B is smaller than the beta symbol, for instance. But overall, I think it works for both of them. Like, you can see that Smith Corona really didn't need to come up with a different size alpha and beta just to meet the needs of an elite typeface machine. It seems like the alpha and the beta does work for both a pica and an elite machine. Changeable type slugs that came with the machine from the factory, like the 1 exclamation mark and plus equals in the case of a US keyboard in this Galaxy 12, they did come in 2 different sizes, pica and elite, as we see. But the actual collection of additional characters appears to be one set. They didn't come in 2 different sizes. Changeable type is interesting, and I haven't really used, of the 6 that I have not really used them in any practical purpose. So I do kind of like sometimes using the tilde symbol, but I think the one that is most practical for my purposes is probably the degree symbol, because I write letters to people and sometimes talk about, oh, what are the temperatures like in New Mexico in the summertime or whatever, and people are surprised to find out they're not as hot as Phoenix maybe, or they're surprised to find out that we get snow and freezing cold weather in the winter. So I could see using the degree symbol. I probably wouldn't change out the keycap. I would just pop it onto probably the plus equals key just for that letter, not change out the keycap because I'm not going to be permanently using it for that purpose. On the one hand, Smith Corona made a whole bunch of different characters, but on the other hand, I don't really know if they sold all that well. There are a lot of these available individually and in the kits on eBay and other places online. So they certainly sold a lot of them. But it wasn't the same thing as having a type ball for an IBM Selectric. It wasn't like an entire character set that you're changing out. It's only specialty characters. And I tip my hat to Smith Corona for doing that. By the way, I also noticed in a little bit of my online research that I think it was Brother that also had their own version of changeable type, and they weren't the same as Smith Coronas, and in fact the slugs were big enough that the machines that had it was missing the type slug next to it in order to give room for that extra wide replaceable slug to be there. Anyways, changeable type is interesting, and now typewriter collectors like to collect these. Not necessarily to use, but just to have. Now, I've gone through the whole library of characters, and I think the one that would be nice to have is the interrobang. That would be kind of fun, right? Just to have an interrobang just to use. That would be fun. But I'm curious to hear from you. Have you collected change-a-type keys for Smith Corona 6 series and above? And do you use them? And if so, what are your favorite characters? I'd like to hear from you down below. But as always, stay creative, keep writing, keep creating, and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.